So that means basically the firm is going to be overstaffed. They'll have more workers than are necessary. In our monopoly union model, the firm accepted the higher wage, and the wage was the only thing that was being negotiated on. But here, that's not the case. You have the firm and the union negotiating over both the wage and the employment level, taking both into consideration. Now, there's an old term called feather bedding, which is useful to describe this practice. Basically, as part of their agreement with the union, firms end up hiring more workers than are necessary, and it's known by both sides of this negotiation. So the firm may hire extra staff in a supervisory role that doesn't really provide much. They may have extra people on staff and create new make work tasks for them, or even have some no-show jobs where people don't actually have to show up to the office or spend very little time actually working. Now, because the efficient contract line was upward sloping, that means that as firms move from point P all the way out to point Z along that curve, they would also increase the level of employment. But that's not always the case. In some extreme examples, the efficient contract line is vertical. That means that for each wage level, the firm is going to hire the same amount of workers. And we call that a strongly efficient contract. I don't want to dig into this too much, and you're not going to have specific questions asking you to mess around with this like the original one, but I do want to touch on this at least a little bit because I think it's important. And here we can see that idea visually where we have this vertical line right here. So we're not seeing an increase in employment as the wages go up, like we saw here, where the curve is sloping upwards. Here, the employment level is set at E star. The only question is what the wage is going to be. At any wage that the firm and union agree to, we'll end up with the same number of workers. But again, there are many different wages that these employees could be hired for. Where they fall on that line is going to determine how the profits are shared between the union and the firm. So if they agree on point P here, the firm is going to keep all of the profit. As they move higher up this curve towards point Z, the union is going to capture more and more of those profits. And all the way at point Z here, the firm is going to break even. Remember, the textbook defines point Z like this curve is the break-even point. So as they reach that point, the firm breaks even and the union is able to capture all the profits. Anywhere in between, point R, point Q, anywhere on this line, the firm is going to capture some and the union is going to capture some. I also don't want to dig into the evidence on efficient contracts too much. I know I've got two different courses in this like one single course. Those in the HR program really don't need to go through the evidence on efficient contracts, whether this holds or not. But I do think it's important sometimes to highlight whether or not these theories that we have actually match reality. So there has been some empirical evidence done. There's been some studies done that attempt to estimate the demand curve for a firm or for a unionized industry, and they look at the actual observed employment levels. Basically, what they tend to find is that the employment levels are not on that estimated demand curve, that they are to the right, just as we had shown in a simple way through this model. I will stop there because this is already going long, and in their next lecture video, we'll pick up with strike behavior and the decision for the union to strike.